it went live,
Oh,
which I was not planning on it. So someone sent me a message, and then it popped up on my phone, and I was like, "Am I live on YouTube right now? Okay, that's cool." But we are live now, and we mean to be. So, welcome anyone on Facebook, on YouTube. Good to see you guys. Good to see y'all hopping in here. If you're watching the replay, just say hey. Hashtag replay. I always like to see who's in here. But I realized that I do a lot of the same kind of, I don't know, banter of like welcoming people every single time in the Facebook group. I was like, that probably gets tiring for like the first 3 minutes of everything. So I'm just going to jump on in. So, Ashleigh, if you're good to get started, let's go ahead and get
yeah, I'm
started.
all set.
Sweet. I guess I should tell y'all, if y'all are watching live, we're talking about. There is some point to the banter, I guess. We're talking about how to become the go-to photographer in your area, in the industry, all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited about that. It's gonna be a good chat. And a little behind the scenes for y'all. I was on Ashleigh's podcast where we recorded it recently, a few weeks ago.
Yes.
So I think it's coming out like next month. So be
Yes.
looking for that. I'll definitely be sharing it with y'all too. But yeah, Ashleigh, let's get started. Well,
Absolutely.
welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to chat again. I know I just told everyone before that I was on your podcast recently, and had a great time. So I am excited to get to chat with you again. So yeah, welcome to my show.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat today. I think it's going to be a great topic. And like when you were on my podcast, we chatted for a long time. So I'm excited.
I know. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, I am so long-winded, and also just like want to talk about all the things and enjoy talking
hmm
with people because like I'm at home most of the time and not around people anymore like I used to be. And yeah, so I just love talking to adults. Really, I mean, my kids are cool, but it's always the same: mermaids and Paw Patrol.
hmm
Which we can talk about mermaids and Paw Patrol if you'd like to.
I'm sorry. My niece has me beat on expert for Paw Patrol. So
Oh
unfortunately, I'm
yeah.
not in there. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. And now they've got the Mighty Pups, and they have cats now too, I think. I
I
saw
didn't know
them the
that
other
one.
day.
That's new.
That was new for me too. And I was like, all right, cool. But yeah, we won't be talking about any of those things. But we will be talking about photography and business and all of that. And kind of before we get into like who are you, where are you based, what do you shoot, all of that, I
hmm
like to bring in a question from the listeners. Just a random
Absolutely.
question, could be business related, could be not. And this one is from Annie, and I had it pulled up. Here we go. Annie asks, if you were a place, what place would you be?
Who? Honestly, the first thing that popped in my head was my hometown, which is Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. I mean,
Cool.
I grew up going to the beach, and I'm a very like beachy water person. So I think like sunny, bubbly. I think that ties in pretty well.
I mean, it sounds accurate. Yeah. That is one that I've always wanted to go. Hilton Head and
hmm
what's the other one? Turtle Bay? Nope. Maybe, I don't know. It's
I'm not
one
sure.
in, I think, Georgia or something. That I those were always on my list of places to go. But yeah, no, I love that. It does seem very fitting. Just
hmm
like with your personality and everything. Just I love the beach. I love like playing. I'm very active on the beach.
hmm
Not a surfer, but I like to do other things, just like playing
It's
around,
okay.
volleyball, jumping. Yeah, we have the beaches that we have here in Texas are in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's just
hmm
small little like 1 foot waves, so
That's
there's
how it
not
is in Hilton Head,
much.
actually.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
not, you don't surf in Hilton Head, actually. A lot of boogie boarding.
Hmm.
I had friends who like they like to surf, so they would drive up to like Charleston or like Beaufort area, like Huntington Island, and they'd have little
Yeah.
better waves. But it was more like when hurricane season came, and that's when the waves got a little bigger, and that's when more
Yeah.
people would go surfing.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, Hilton Head's kind of like a chill
Yeah,
beach.
it
Yeah,
is.
I like that. I like just the sound of the waves is just so
Hmm.
calming for me. I just love anything with the water. So okay, well, cool. Well, I feel like we already know you pretty well from just that. But give us a little bit of where you're currently based and what you photograph, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm currently based in Clemson, South Carolina. I'm actually a student at the university, so that's why I'm up here now.
Cool.
And tying into that, I'm a senior and grad photographer up here, and I've been doing that for about a year and a half now.
Okay. Nice. Nice. Mostly there at Clemson, or do you like
Hmm.
travel a good bit? I would imagine like you've got a
So,
lot of
majority,
connections being a
yes.
student there.
Majority of my sessions are Clemson graduates, but I have had a lot of like high school seniors, and for those I do travel to some extent just because of like the Greenville area and just suburbs in
Right.
that area as well.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, that's very cool. And I love that did that just kind of like organically happen because like you
Mhm.
had a camera and someone was needing some
Yeah, basically.
graduation photos? Cool.
Basically, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but obviously other people won't know. My mom's a photographer back home, and so I grew up in this industry and like learning about it. And I was actually an associate photographer for her in high school before I even came to Clemson. And so all
Nice.
my friends here at Clemson knew me as, oh my gosh, like you know how to do photography. I'm graduating. Will you do my photos? And that's just how it started spiraling.
Yeah, a little bit more elevated than just like, oh yeah, Ashley's
Yeah.
got a good camera. She probably knows how to use it. It's like, no, you actually know how to use it.
Hmm. For
As an
sure.
associate, what kind? I think you told me on a previous conversation on your podcast.
Yeah.
What kind of photography did your mom do?
Mainly families and extended families. Hilton Head is
Okay,
such a
yeah,
tourist destination. So over the summer, all these tourists and their families come down and they want to memorialize what happened because, I mean, especially post COVID. And that's when I started becoming an associate photographer, when people started
hmm,
realizing truly that the time you have with someone is so special and you have no idea whether they're going to be here for your next vacation.
yeah, yeah. Or like even with the vacations, it's like I don't even know when the next one we can go on. Like
Exactly.
let's photograph this one instead of being like, I know for us it was always just like, oh well, we'll do family photos next year. It's like
Hmm.
we're busy this year or this spring, we want to do like wildflower photos, but we're busy, so we'll do it next year. And then it's just like the years just keep adding on.
Hmm.
But yeah, that kind of, COVID woke us up to life is short,
Exactly.
and like don't just assume that people are going to be in your life 5 years from now. But like take the time, schedule that photo shoot, all of that. So that's cool that
Exactly.
you
Because
were
you
already
never
doing
know.
like kind of, yeah, you never know. But you were in like the family kind of family
Hmm.
photography. So seniors a good kind of like uh sister to that, instead of like,
Hmm.
studio or food or whatever. Um, but that's very cool. Has there been something through the years that you've been, having your own business or even associate shooting, that like you either had a lesson that you learned or someone like shared some advice that you're like, ooh, this is a game changer?
Yeah. So, number one, hard work pays off. And that's something I've also
Mm,
learned just in my personal life. Um, Obviously, it won't come around the first time you try something, but just keep pushing at it, and eventually it'll turn around for you. I've learned and gone through that multiple times in my life, and whether that's like the second time I've tried something or two or three times, just keep pushing. And that ties especially when you're being a photographer, especially in the beginning when
mhm,
you have no clients and you're just trying to get your name out there. And instead of just discounting your sessions, like for example, or like doing giveaways or things like that, just keep pushing at it. Don't knock down your prices and your value, but just keep pushing, and eventually it will stick, and your ideal client will eventually come to you.
Yeah, I love that advice because it is really it's difficult, especially like starting off, because you could get like three no's in a row
Mhm.
and just be like, all right, well, no one wants to hire me. I'm not good. I or like you've had like I've had those sessions where I went out either just kind of feeling off or something like I wasn't bringing like a game. It was like, B plus game, but still like I wasn't
Mhm.
super creative. I wasn't really feeling it. And then like leaving that, just being like, these are fine, but it's not my best work. And like having that happen can really get in your head and feel like, okay, well, maybe I'm not, this isn't for me, or maybe people don't want to book me. But yeah, just like pushing through, like just telling yourself like I'm a good photographer. People do want to book with me, and like continuing on, because sometimes you will get some no's, and that is good to get no's. If you're getting only
Yeah.
yeses from people, you are
That's
you're
more of a
doing too
problem.
much. Yeah.
Like I get told no all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
And because I am in a college grad market, and majority of the time those grads are paying themselves for their photos, I get told all the time I'm too
Hmm.
expensive. And like it happens all the time. And I've learned to come and deal with the fact that it's okay. You're not affordable to everybody, and you're not in everybody's
Yeah.
budget, especially in like a senior grad market, especially if they're paying for it themselves. I mean, they're college students. um but that's where you have to learn like who your ideal market is. Like, are you marketing to the parents who are going to pay for this? Are you marketing to more of like a sorority girl? Are you marketing to like the average person? And that's what you need to start figuring it out. And honestly, you'd rather be told no's, because it tells you that you're where you should be in your business, pricing wise especially. um
Oh yeah.
if you're getting told yes all the time, you need to raise your prices because you're too cheap.
Yes. Yeah. I I was recently on a podcast, and I was talking about that and how like I used to love when people would be like, "Oh, that's your prices? Yeah,
Yeah.
like let's go ahead and book. Like this is a deal." And I was like, "Yeah, that's right. I'm a deal. This is good." And
Hmm.
then I learned like, "Oh no, I don't want to be a deal. I don't want to be like the discounted like, oh no, go with him because like you're hardly paying anything and you're getting good work. He doesn't, I didn't know my own value, and I was trying to just like book out the calendar. And yeah, like taking yeses like that takes away from other yeses. There were
Hmm.
times that I booked like a cheap little wedding that I didn't really feel aligned with the couple, but I was like, I've got this date open, so I might as well do it. And I'll discount it a little bit because they kind of had shocked faces at
Hmm.
the pricing. And then months later had like a dream wedding come in for that same date. And I was like, oh, if I had just stuck
Yeah.
with my prices, my value, I would have been able to do what I wanted to instead of like doing something differently. So
Yeah, absolutely. And
also
one of the biggest
great.
things I've learned in business is you can make the same amount of money doing 30 sessions at a lower price as 10 with a higher price, and save yourself all the stress and burnout. And I think that was one
Yeah,
of the greatest lessons I've learned, because sure, you're not booking as much, but you're making the same amount of money, if not more, as you were when you were running around like a chicken with their head cut off.
right. Yeah. And then you have more time to work on your business and
Yes.
like create a better client experience, and just more time to do stuff around the house, to go enjoy your leisure time out at Hilton Head and just like
Yeah.
enjoy the waves. And yeah, it's that was a huge mindset shift for me when I realized like I really need to be doing like working less, getting paid
Hmm.
more, still creating a great experience, and not just like, well, this is the same experience that I was charging X amount. Now I'm charging three times that, but still giving the same experience. Like you also need to elevate what you're doing as you go.
But you're also
So
adding
yeah,
your experience into that. So while you might be
a
at
hundred
having the
percent.
same numbers on face value, you have if it's, you say you change your prices a year later, you have a year more of experience than you did the year before when you were charging those lower prices, and that's something that people overlook a lot, I think, too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm going into my 15th year of being a photographer. I'm still learning new stuff. I'm
Hmm.
still like experimenting with things and learning my camera, and like cameras are getting better. Uh every
Oh
new
yeah.
release. I'm just like, oh yeah, there's stuff like we can continue to grow. And like there's that saying of like the stream of water, like as
Hmm.
you're growing and continuing to move like a stream, you bring life. But if you stay stagnant, like just a puddle, like that's you're only bringing like mud. And that's whenever like weird bacteria and stuff starts to grow, and you don't want bacteria growing on you. um, so yeah, just continuing to grow as you go is great. Which, speaking of growing, like we can I want to get into like growing into and how to
Hmm.
like position ourselves into being a go-to photographer. So what does that mean really, of being like the go-to?
Yeah, so for me, that just means being really high in demand. So, like for me personally, I book 4 to 5 months out in advance. So basically, the semester before, usually maybe 1 or 2 months before the semester ends, I'm booked out for the next semester. And which does mean I need to start raising my prices because it's in that
The
regard.
demand is up,
But
yeah.
yes, but when your demand is up really high, and and for me, having like all those referrals built up, like word of mouth is huge. That's where I get most of my bookings, actually, from word of mouth. And like I barely have to do any marketing or any advertising myself. And in my personal experience, in my opinion, that means that you are more of a go-to photographer because people want to go for you without even having to Google clumps of photographers. They're like, oh, I already know who I want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's speak to that for a minute, because that
Yeah.
is, I know marketing is like super crazy scary for a lot of people. It's just like it's a businessy word. It's a, I don't know, this could
Oh
be so
yeah.
many different things. And like that network marketing, the word of mouth, like what are some things that you do that really like sets you apart to where your clients are sharing with other people and their friends of like,
Yeah.
oh, Ashley's great, you need to hire her.
Yeah, so actually the first thing I did, and this is a little exercise that everyone can do, that's a business exercise, create a value curve with between you and your competitors nearby and see what
Mm,
they offer and what you could potentially offer and what is different between the two. And whatever is different is the stuff that you need to highlight in whatever marketing you do on your website or anything like that. So for me personally, I noticed that number one, there wasn't a luxury market in Clemson for like the more higher end, more high quality photos. So I knew that's where I wanted to be. And that's where I started out, even as just being able to provide high quality images at a higher price point, because then it'll correlate more so in a mindset of a client versus having high quality photos and a low price point. People are always like, what's the catch? So I
right.
knew that
Yeah.
that's the mindset I wanted to play into. Another thing is majority of the photographers on campus count each of the locations on campus as a separate location. And one thing I did that was
Mm,
different was I took the two most iconic places where you can spend maybe 5 minutes getting the image that someone wants, and I put them together and I said, that's one location. It only counts
yeah.
as one out of your two. And people still love that. They're like, I don't know why no one does that because we spend 5 minutes at the location and then we leave.
Right.
And then we'll spend
Yeah.
40 minutes at my other location.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, just analyzing what other people are doing is so great. And I know like some people kind of shy away from that and like, oh, don't look at what other
Mm-hmm.
people are doing. Like, do your own thing. But like, there's so much to learn from the market around you, and in ways to set yourself apart. Because like
Yeah.
that kind of thing is like, if I'm looking for someone, I'm like, okay, well, I want this place and I want this one, and like I know it's going to be just like 5 minutes at this third location, and other people are like, well, to add another location, it's going to be X amount of dollars and
Mm-hmm.
this add-on, or you have to go with this package, which is longer time, and it's like, this is so much, and then you're just over here like, I know that's included, and like
Yeah.
that, like ironing out those friction points to make a very like streamlined and easy
Mhm.
yes for your clients is huge. So I love that you did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and that's something I talk about. I talk about like all over my website. I'm like Tillman Hall and Sykes Hall, same location. You don't have to choose, you don't have to pick because everyone
Mhm.
those are the two most iconic backgrounds on campus and everybody wants pictures in front of both. So why wouldn't you want to market towards that, especially when no one else is?
Yeah. Yeah. And you also mentioned, I want to touch on this too,
Yeah.
that whole like elevating yourself into that luxury market and not just providing great quality images, good experience at a low price, but at a
Mhm.
high price. Like this is high value at a high price. So you're not getting the price shoppers who are just
Mhm.
like, oh, this is a great deal. Like, we'll go with her. Or you're getting the people who have the budget to spend the high price point.
Mhm.
And then they look at you and they're like, I mean, the images look great. I've heard that your client experience is great. But based on what you're charging, I don't think I'm going to get as good of an experience as I would with someone else.
Mhm.
It's like buying like a I don't know. I was gonna say a Mercedes. I don't know if that's like super. I guess that's a nicer car, but like buying a more luxury vehicle, like a
Mhm.
Mercedes, Cadillac, BMW, something like that,
Yeah.
versus like a Honda Civic. Like
Mhm.
if they're around the same price point, I'd be like, what's wrong with this Mercedes that I can get it for the
Exactly.
same price instead of yeah, no, I know that getting high quality I'm gonna have to pay a little bit more. So that's great for because like starting off, I just wanted to undercut everyone and get
Mhm.
portfolio and get work, which I think there is a time and place for that. But then I stayed there and
Mhm.
wanted to be that deal and to be the oh hey, yeah go with John like because he's super cheap but you get great stuff and I was really missing
Mhm.
out on a lot of the people who um, would spend more with me who were scared just like I don't know
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't trust it.
And that goes back to even like analyzing the market and seeing what people are
Hmm.
charging currently. If you can, I know some people don't post their prices online, and that's another topic.
Yeah.
um, but um, I noticed that there was a huge range of prices in my area, ranging from $50 to about $350 to 400, depending on if it was someone traveling in or if it was a student who was doing your photos. So I knew that I wanted to be at 400 or above because that's how you're going to set yourself apart in a market because everyone who's charging, let's say 350 and lower, there's 50 photographers and they're all the same and they all have the
Hmm.
same marketing plan and the same package and everything. And you could have a very similar package, and as long as you're charging $50 more, as long as your branding is there, people are going to be like, "Oh, $50 more, they must be better photos." Because it's
Yeah.
not a huge jump in that regard.
Oh yeah. I'm a coffee snob and like I will go
Mhm.
into different coffee shops and if there's like a a latte for $1, I'm like, I don't think this is gonna be good. I don't
Mhm.
trust that this coffee is gonna be roasted well. I don't think it's gonna taste great. But if I walk in, it's like starting at like $4 or $6. I'm like,
Mhm.
that's about good. Like maybe a little bit pricey, but I know that it's gonna be good quality coffee. And yeah, I think it's something to really keep in mind when you're like pricing yourself and looking at the market because also different markets different prices. It's different in like New York City than it is here in
Mhm.
College Station, Texas. It's a very very different
Yeah.
market pricing wise. But yeah, looking at everyone around you, kind of getting a good sense and doing that value curve that you talked about. I think that is so underrated, or not really underrated, but just underused by a
Like
lot
people
of
because
people.
it's something that's talked about a lot in business, and it's actually something
Hmm.
I've learned in my business class, and it's just something that the average person doesn't know about, especially in the photography industry, because we don't come from a business background, and
Right.
so you
We're
don't know these little
creatives.
tips and
Yeah.
tricks. Exactly. So that's why I said, like, so if anyone has time later today, sit down and do a value curve and rank you and your competitors on different services or products in the market. And
Yeah.
whatever you defer on is something you need to prioritize in your business versus something where you're the same.
Hmm. Yeah, because a lot of times, like we're all talking about the same thing. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, make you feel comfortable in front of the camera. It's like, cool. Every photographer says that. Like, what is something different that you do? Like, there's a couple here in town that they like create Spotify playlists for their
Mm-hmm.
couples for engagement shoots and for the wedding day based on their personalities and the music that they like, because this couple is very into music and like music theory and like all this kind of stuff, and they've woven that into their brand. Their website is all about like music and stuff. Their packages are based on like, albums or cassettes or something like that. And like it's what you think about with them, and anyone who like that's something different. Like, oh, like I would feel comfortable if I'm listening to music that I like.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So I'm gonna go with them. That's an elevated experience. And it's something different that not everyone else is doing. So yeah, I love that. And we could like spend a whole
Yeah.
hour on, on value curve and like how to implement that. Are there certain things that you would suggest like really looking at, or even just like how can you start talking about it? Especially for those who are just like, I don't know, like I know that I do this thing differently, but how
Mm-hmm.
do I talk about it? How do I put it out there?
Yeah, and one thing that I even wanted to mention first, to be like simple, something that can set you apart is your editing style.
Mhm.
Like very simple. Think about stuff
Yeah.
like that because everyone edits differently. I'm one of maybe two photographers that edit naturally in this
Hmm.
area. And like I said before, there's like 50 some photographers, but that's something I hone into a lot. So something I do, like going off the editing style example, is I have it in my Instagram bio. I have authentic, timeless, and bright portraits because that's how I like to describe my editing style. And that's the first thing anyone sees on my Instagram
Mm.
bio. And it's also one of the first things people see on my website when they are on my website on the homepage and on the about me section when I'm talking about like me and my photography business. On the first line you read is authentic, bright, and timeless. And like to
Yeah.
me, like that's so important to my branding. So I make sure that I say it in multiple ways on multiple different locations and different platforms. um, Going into that location example where I offer two is the same location, I have it on my website, I have it on my social media, on numerous different posts where I talk about like the top locations, when I talk about what makes me different, like why do I combine these two, why should that be important? Why would I want pictures at both locations? I also have a
Hmm.
blog post about locations and about how I combine the two. And I also have it in their senior style guide that I send out when they book with me. I have a section dedicated to locations and with picture examples and descriptions. And the first location that they see is Tillman and Sykes, and below it says, yes, they are combined. Yes, that's true. So
Yeah.
it's like something I really play up, just because I know it's different. So I spend less time talking about how many images are included or
Mhm.
what you should wear at a session because it's what everyone else is talking about, or like
Yeah.
what you should bring. Should you bring your cap and gown? Everyone kind of knows that at this point, just because it's said even by photographers in other locations that they may be following. So I'm trying to feel like what's different and what my ideal client is looking for or could be searching for when they're trying to get ready for their session.
Yeah, I think that is a huge thing of putting yourself in their shoes, of not what would another photographer, what would I, the
Mm-hmm.
photographer, want to put out there that I would be looking for, but like what would a senior who's getting some photos taken and maybe doesn't know anything about photography. Maybe they're the first of their friend group who has had their
Mm-hmm.
senior photos taken, and they're just like, I don't know. I'm coming in with no knowledge at all. It's like putting yourself in those shoes of like, what would I be searching for? What would I want? And like the searching for is something huge for like blogging titles and
Oh,
SEO
absolutely.
wise. If you're like, okay, what would I actually like type into the search engine? and then having those keywords in your posts. And but yeah, I also love that, like, you rattled off like 5 or 6 different
Yeah.
places that you speak to the same thing. And I think that's huge, because a lot of times we'll be like, well, I had posted that once on
Mhm.
Instagram. I pinned it to the top of my my profile, so people know. Like, so many, I mean, one,
No.
social media, we get like 3 to 6% of our followers actually see our
Oh, yeah.
stuff now.
Probably less than that
And
even.
yeah, it's getting smaller and smaller every year as we go. And but like, there's one, we're having fewer eyes on the things that we're posting, but also people are just inundated with information all the time.
Mhm.
It used to be like you needed like 5 to 7
Yeah.
times
It's like
of like
double now.
repetition. Yeah, it's like 14
It's
to 20
crazy.
times of, like, that's how many times people need to see your work, or see what you're talking about, for it to like finally hit,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, Ashley does these 2 locations as the same. I've seen that. I saw that on Instagram. Now I'm on her website. Oh, now I'm on this blog that she, and now I've got this guide that I downloaded, and all of them are saying the same thing. It's like, oh, that is the reason that I'm going to hire her, because
Mhm.
she's great. Editing is great, but like, this is the thing that I really really want. And like, having that more than just like, well, I put it out there once and people should know,
Mhm.
but just like all the places. I think that is, it's something that is very overlooked. We don't think, or don't want to be like annoying too. Like, that was me. I didn't want to be the annoying person that was
Yeah.
like always talking about like, oh no, I love night photography. I love taking you out at like 10 minutes during the reception while everyone's dancing, and like, y'all go out and we'll just get some photos with the stars. And I was like, I feel like I talk about this all the time. And now
Mhm.
it's something that people know me for, and something that people hire me for, is because they're like, oh no, we love your night photography work. We know that you're going to be great the rest of the day, because like, that should be the standard, to take great photos the whole wedding day. But now we want this because it's different.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And one good rule of thumb that I've heard is you can post it every 9 posts, because that's not the first thing they're going to see anymore when they come on your feed. And when
Hmm.
they scroll, they're going to forget. And another thing is too, like especially with your like night photography example, there are many different ways that you could post about it without talking about it. Like even if you just post the picture but your caption says something else, you're
Yep.
showing your work instead of like telling it, but everyone can still experience and soak it in.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like, I did a New Year's Eve post a few months ago, and
Mhm.
did a photo that, it wasn't a New Year's Eve wedding, but they had fireworks at their wedding. So I posted a photo of, like, they were very well lit, and then we also had fireworks. And I wasn't like talking about like, well, this is how I set up my flashes to do this thing. It
Mhm.
was just like, hey, happy New Year, everyone. We're going into 2024. Hope it's a great year, whatever. And then had that. So yeah, like, you don't have to say the same thing over and over again. Um, but yeah, just being able to share. And I like that you mentioned like every nine squares on
Mhm.
Instagram. Like, it's a whole different thing. And everyone is not like your mom. Just like, your mom probably
Yeah,
sees
scrolling
everything
through
because,
everything.
yeah, just like going through your archives and like, oh yeah, that one was great.
Mhm.
I forgot to double tap on that one. And like, not everyone out there is going to be getting all of your stuff or scrolling through all of your things. So like, having that repetition is not going to hurt you, and it's not going to be
No.
annoying. There are some educators that I follow closely, like some that I've taken multiple courses from, Two Man Studios, Erica and Lanny Man. They post the same photos all the time. Like, they'll post their new
Mhm.
stuff, but a lot of times it's just like, oh, here is that photo in Turkey that was like really blue, and then they had like some orange lights going off over here. I'm like, I know this photo really well because I've seen it over and over again over the years. But someone new to them, in
Wouldn't
those
know.
9 squares, wouldn't know, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is an amazing photo." And yeah, every time that it pops up, I'm like, "Oh yeah, double tap. Yeah, this is a great photo. It's
Mhm.
still a great photo 5 years later." And like, I think we get into that idea of everything has to be new. I can't talk about the same thing I talked about, promoting
Mhm.
my wardrobe guide, 6 months ago. So I can't talk about it again this calendar year. I have to wait. But yeah, like just it also makes posting and marketing a lot easier because you don't have
Yeah,
to have
absolutely.
150 different things to talk about. It's like I can talk about these like 7 points over and over.
Yeah, and you can always repurpose that content too. Like you don't necessarily have to do a feed
Hmm.
post for like each time either. Like you could do a reel or a story post or cuz
Yeah.
I found like people who read like watch my stories are completely different people than like my posts cuz
Oh
they
yeah.
show up on different spots in the feed.
Hmm.
So saying it even like in the same week, like no one would ever know unless it's like your close friend or your mom because they're not going to be watching both your stories and have you show up in their feed.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I like to repurpose anything on my feed like later on that week,
Mhm.
3 or 4 days later. I'll just share it to my stories and talk a little bit
Oh
about it.
yeah.
And that is usually, like you said, a different audience because I'm more of a story watcher when I get on Instagram. Like I'll scroll
Mhm.
through the feed every now and then, but I'm mostly just going through stories. And I'm
I do the same
like,
thing.
that's yeah, it's just
'Cause
more
it's like the
real.
highlights. It's the
Yeah,
highlights
yeah,
almost,
yeah. Hmm.
and
Yeah,
it's like, I know that if I scroll, I'll get lost. I know that. So if I don't have a lot of time,
yeah.
I'll flip through the stories because Instagram's algorithm is really good at picking the people you click on their stories the most and puts them in the front.
Yes.
So the people
Yes.
who I want to check on, they're right there and easy to look at. So that's where I normally put like the most important information, or if it's something I want seeing quickly, I'll put on my stories versus my feed or even reels because I think reels is more like long term, especially nowadays.
Hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
more short term. And another thing that I didn't even mention is using your blog posts as captions. And
Oh yeah.
I do that all the time. And so like one day I'll do like the whole list. Like if I said the top 10 whatever, I'll list out the top 10 on one post. And then the next post, maybe a couple days later, I'll break down the first one. And then a couple days later I'll break down the second one and so on and so forth. And like that's creating a lot of different posts, 11 different posts that you can use from one blog post.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then you could even break down even further to talk about like a certain
Mhm.
aspect of one of those. And it's like repurposing content is gold because it's just like you don't have to start from zero. You've already got
Oh
this that you
yeah.
can pull from. Like whenever I post about new podcast episodes, I take whatever like intro caption, not caption, but like the intro show notes of
Yeah.
like who was on this week, what we talked about. I just copy that over,
Yeah.
put it right
I
in
do the
the
same
caption,
thing.
and that's my caption. I'm like, yeah,
I do
this is
the
great.
same
Like,
thing. And then I just add
yeah,
click the link in the bio.
there you go.
And
Yeah.
I do the same exact thing because you have the words already down and like you can choose
Hmm.
whether or not to reword it. And like another thing I do like with my blog posts is I'll take the featured image and I'll post it to my
Hmm.
stories with a link to the blog. And so that brings people over to your website. And
Yeah.
that's another way to repurpose your content into stories that where you're still getting your social media people engaged, but they're just
Hmm.
affecting your SEO versus your follower count.
Yep. And we haven't even talked about Pinterest and like how you
Oh,
can repurpose
yeah,
all of that into
exactly.
Pinterest too. And
I use
like,
the same thing I do for Pinterest. I just put on my
hmm,
stories. The same
yeah,
exact Canva download.
yeah. Oh yeah. And like, I love Pinterest because it is so long form. And there's one photo that I took at a wedding in 2014
Oh
that
yeah.
is still one of my highest repin. It's just like people just keep sharing it because it was a cute little flower girl who had a bubble gun and she's just like running down the
Oh yeah,
aisle
I would pin
and it's
that.
bubbles. Yeah.
I would
I
100%
was
pin that.
like, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's just something that like it continues to live on. I posted that
Mhm.
photo on social media. It is gone. It is buried. You'd
Exactly.
have to scroll back. I mean, I've repurposed it obviously multiple times, but like you'd still have to scroll back a good bit to see that photo. But yeah, I mean, taking a lot of the repurposing that you've already talked about, and then putting that toward Pinterest is just, it's going to grow your website and your social media too, just because that's where people are going to look for inspiration. Like that's the whole thing that
Oh yeah,
Pinterest is.
absolutely. And that's my goal for this year, is to get better at Pinterest, because I've
Same.
gotten so good about repurposing my blog posts and putting them like on Instagram, which is linked to my
Hmm.
Facebook, which is the easiest thing ever.
Yep.
In terms of marketing. But Pinterest is the one thing where that's the one place I forget to go. But I've learned that you can just batch it. So like whenever I remember,
Yeah.
I just go in and I do all the blog posts that I haven't done until then.
Hmm.
Because it's one of
Yeah.
those content, like you said, it's long form. So it doesn't matter
It's
when
long
you
form.
post it.
No, yeah. Tailwind is amazing because I will just go in there and
Mm.
just upload a bunch of the images that I just put in my blog and then caption those. And then I can just schedule them to be like, yeah, post 3 of these a day for the next 15 days. And then I don't
That's
have to think
awesome.
about anything for 2 more weeks until all of that content is done, and then I can go in and upload more stuff. So yeah, it feels very daunting, especially like the Pinterest gurus who are just like, you need to be posting like
Oh yeah.
10 to 20 pins a day. Like this is overwhelming. But yeah, just like starting off, I'm wanting to get
Mm-hmm.
started. I used to have like tens of thousands of views a day or a month or whatever it is, and then it got down to like 120. And
Yeah.
slowly, that's one of my 2024 goals, is to be more consistent and better with Pinterest.
Yeah, and the reality is, if you're not getting clients from Pinterest, don't stress that you need to follow these Pinterest gurus who do it for a living. And like for like
Hmm.
Etsy, I get it. You're making money from people clicking it and going to your shop. But as a photographer, if you find that Pinterest isn't what's getting you your ideal client, don't focus on it. Like have it be on your back burner, like how I do mine. Like whenever you remember, just go in and do it. Don't feel like you need to
Yeah.
stress like you do. Don't feel like you need to spread out too thin. That's one thing that I always say, is find one or two modes of marketing and focus on them. Like I mentioned, I have my Facebook tied to my Instagram. I don't even open my Facebook business page unless I get a notification. I don't
Hmm.
post to it. I just do it automatically from Instagram. So I don't even have to look at it and worry about it. It's just something
Yeah.
that I don't want on my plate.
Yep. Yeah. That's one less thing to worry about, but you're still serving that
Mm-hmm.
portion of the market who's still on Facebook, and maybe they just thrive over there and they love being on Facebook. But if you're not just that one little click of like share to Facebook, that one little toggle that you
Oh
need to
yeah.
do, you're missing out on possibly, like, I get a lot of parents
That's what
that
it is. It's
are
parents.
on Facebook, and then they'll see the photo and be like, "Ooh, hey," and then that's how the couple's like, "Oh yeah, my mom was like, she saw your stuff and shared, and now we're here," uh,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm sure also very
It's
huge
exactly
for
the same with
senior
seniors.
photography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, the seniors are all on Instagram, and that's who I really
Hmm.
want to speak to. And, like, basically, I want them to, I don't know what the word is, but it's fine. Basically, I want them to have an experience where they, where they understand, like, who I am, and they can, like, feel for who I
Yeah.
am through a screen versus me talking to their parents on Facebook. While, yes, their
Right.
parents may be paying for it, but if I was a mom, which I'm not yet, but if I was, and if I was picking a photographer and then my daughter came and she was like, I want this one. I love this. I love this. I love this. Guess who I'm going to go with? I'm going to go with the
Yeah.
one that is going to give my daughter the best experience, the one she wants in the end.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like, if you are the senior and your mom's coming to you and like, I found this
Yeah.
photographer, check them out, and then you go on Instagram, and then it's just
Mhm.
like, oh,
And
well,
it's
yeah,
speaking
no,
to
I love her
you. Mhm.
personality. This is great. Like, you love the photos and what you saw on Facebook. I love the person that I'm seeing on
Exactly.
Instagram. This is great. Thanks, mom. Let's go. So yeah, I love that there's like so many different places that all speak in different ways to different clients.
Mhm.
Because like some people are just killing it on TikTok, and
Oh yeah.
some are in LinkedIn, and just like making connections over there.
Exactly. And it depends on who you're marketing, like who you're marketing to, who your ideal client is. So you need to figure that out first. Because I mean, if you're doing commercial or
Mhm.
headshots, LinkedIn is where you got to be. Like that's where you're going to get everybody.
Yes.
But if you're
Yeah.
doing like seniors, if you're doing high school seniors, I would say Instagram and TikTok are probably the
Yeah.
biggest. I focus primarily on my college seniors, so I stay on Instagram. I don't mess that much with TikTok. Um, I'm gonna see if that works this year, though. That's what I'm trying to lean towards to get more high school seniors and more of like the Gen Z population. But
Hmm.
it's definitely, especially like with the times changing, the new generation coming in, it's where you need to reevaluate where your ideal client is hanging out and go
Yeah.
there and be seen there. Even that it's like
Right.
if you're like networking, like me, I go hang out at this coffee shop every single weekend and I work on photography and it's the same coffee shop. So like the baristas know who I am. They know that I'm a photographer and I sit by the door. I have my computer
Hmm.
facing the door. And I can't tell you how many times a girl has walked by me and said, "Do you do photos?" Like you have to
Yeah.
go where they're hanging out. And if you like
Yeah.
even that's like networking in town even.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like don't be afraid. Like don't like just get in the corner and like face your
Yeah. Be
computer to
very
the corner. Like I
strategic.
don't want anyone to, yeah, just like be there,
I
be
angle my
seen.
screen towards where people are walking in, so they have to walk by.
Hmm.
People are nosy. They are.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
T-
And
College
also like
girls?
don't always have
Yeah.
like headphones on because
Yes.
that's like less approachable. Like I'll just put in like one earbud,
I'll do
but
one
have
and
the
I'll do the
one,
opposite ear. I'll do the opposite
yeah,
ear.
so they can't
Everything, the
see it.
whole thing. It's all
Yeah,
strategic
it
and then
is.
you even make friends with the baristas and I'll always post that I'm at the coffee shop even when I'm there sometimes when I remember. And it
Hmm.
gets reposted by the coffee shop because they're a smaller local place. And
Oh
that
yeah.
brings even more people to see. So all their customers see your photography page and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm interested." Click. And it brings them over to
Hmm.
me. And then they go down that little rabbit hole. And they might not
Yeah.
inquire with me that day, but eventually sometimes they do.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a couple, they were, I don't know, maybe a year into their relationship. And I literally ran into them in line at a
Mhm.
coffee shop, like backed up into the guy. I was like, oh, hey, sorry. And then we just started chatting and then exchanged Instagrams. And then they're like, oh, hey, you're a photographer. Cool. And like we just became friends. Maybe 3 years later, they got engaged and they're like,
Mhm.
John, we already know this guy. Like if I had just been like, oh, sorry, like whatever, I'm just gonna like keep my head down and go get my latte. That never would have happened. That would have been, and they were great. They had a donut pyramid for a cake, and it was
That's
so
awesome.
tasty. Yeah, but yeah, no, I think that's a great word of advice. And like this whole conversation has been so full.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I'm excited for the listeners and for this whole thing. Any last words you want to share with everyone before we kind of get to the end here?
Yeah. So the big thing is, like I said earlier, like hard work pays off. Like, don't give up.
Yeah.
Just because it's not working now doesn't mean there's not something you can change or fine tune, or even just like keep pushing at it. Another thing is don't be afraid to spend money to make money. That's something I haven't mentioned yet. And
Hmm.
that's something that I've started learning how to adjust my lifestyle towards. And I found that it works. Like investing in your business and your education as a photographer is huge. And I don't always mean money. You can always invest your time into free education. And that's one of the biggest trade-offs and like life lessons
Yeah.
that I've learned is even just investing your time is huge into like building up yourself either in like your personal life or in your business.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, there's so many great podcasts out there,
Oh yeah.
just like mine and yours that are free, and there's
Mhm.
so much great education. And then like taking that and actually implementing it um, is a huge hurdle for me
Oh,
at least. Like
absolutely.
I'll go to conferences and just have a journal full of
Mhm.
notes, and then just get right back into the day to day routine. And then like 3 months later, I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably implement
You need to
some of these
implement that.
things.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Hmm.
that's the part 2 of my advice. Instead of just
Yes.
like just don't just invest everything. Take that
Yeah.
information and use it to
Yeah.
your own advantage.
Oh yeah. I can't tell you how many courses that I purchased in the early days and just like they
Never
just
opened.
sat there. Yep, never opened. Or
Yeah,
I
I was
like
the
started
opposite.
it and I was like, okay.
I was always the person who was like, do I want to spend the money I just made? I was always the opposite.
Hmm.
And now that I've started investing in like, I have like this
Yeah.
monthly subscription and to like the senior course, and I'm in this other one, and I'm like, this is so useful. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that like every bit of information is going to be new. You might know some of it, and it might just be like a new take on it, or even just like being like the third time you heard something, you're like, okay, like maybe I'm actually going to do it this time. And you
Hmm.
find that like just because you didn't think it would work, it might work. And as long as you just try it, and you can always change it. It's your business. Like at the end of the
Right.
day,
Yeah.
it's yours. And no one's going to care how many times you change the process or what your
No.
packages look like or what your branding looks like, your website looks like. At the end of the day, it's yours and you get to decide how everything comes and goes.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. And like, yeah, it's such a good like there's so many times like even I'm sure that there's listeners who just heard us talking about Pinterest for a minute and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, I know. I've heard that over and over again that I need to start posting." Yeah,
Don't
just
don't
go
worry about it.
do it.
I don't do
Like
it as
you've
much as
heard
I
it.
should.
I definitely don't.
I
I like
yeah.
us talking about it is I'm going to add that to my to-do list for the rest of the week. I'm like I need to
Yeah.
schedule some time. But yeah, actually this has been great. I have loved this. How like before we get into like where people can
Yeah.
find you, listen to your podcast, all of that, there's something that I like to do where we talk about what we're loving this week, and it can be literally anything, new, TV show, book, whatever. uh, what are you loving this week?
Ooh, okay. There's a few, and actually, this is funny because I actually have a section on my about page, which is like like my favorite things, and right below the header, it says what I'm currently obsessed
uh,
with,
oh nice.
and and right now it says my Chug puppy Chanel, who's coming up to visit me this week, and I'm so excited, and Orange Celsius. And
Okay.
yeah, completely random things. And to add to that, but
Yeah.
something I haven't written on there yet is I guess it just ended, but I was binging the Disney Plus Percy Jackson, and I binged
Yes,
all
that
of
was
them.
so good.
It was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I was
It
excited.
was
I was
very
I was a
good.
little worried. I was a little worried. Not gonna lie. Um,
Yeah.
it was one of like the first book series I really got into when I was younger, other than Harry Potter. So
Hmm.
after the movies, I was like, I mean, they were okay as long as
Right.
you
It's
weren't
like
thinking about the books.
right. Yeah.
And so I was concerned for the show. But I think at first when I saw that Rick was a part of it, I was like, okay, it's gonna be fine. And
Hmm.
even like with the changes they made to the plot line, I was like, I'm okay with that. It makes sense, and I'm happy.
Yeah. I thought they did a really good job. And like
Mm-hmm.
it was also very entertaining too. Because sometimes like it'll just kind of be slow because some books are kind of like
Yeah,
have like some slow points, but I felt like the pace
it
of
went
all the
really
episodes was
fast,
really good too. It
and
went too fast.
it went too fast, and because there was 8 episodes, and that was because it was
Hmm.
like a first season. It was like a pilot season because that's how it works on Disney Plus. And
Yeah.
so it did go a lot faster than it did in the books. And they did miss out on a lot of things, but I think they hit everything they needed to, and they hit it well.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not read Percy Jackson, and I also didn't
Whoa.
see the movie. So this was all like new to me,
New.
and I loved it. I thought it was really great, and I love like a lot of the actors, the characters that they got to
They
play
did really
different
well.
people in there. Huge Jason Mantzoukas fan, so seeing him, I was just like,
Hmm.
cool. I like this guy, and he just played himself pretty much, just as a
Yeah.
god.
Yeah, basically.
um, yeah, but yeah, I thought it was really cool. My wife and I both went through like as it was coming out every week, and we were like,
I would watch it
this is
every
old
night.
school.
Like every
Yeah.
Tuesday night, I watched it.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
I was so excited for the whole thing. Like I I read them when they first came out. I got them for like a Christmas present or something. The original box set
Nice.
that they don't even make anymore. I found out they don't even make the original covers. So I need to go home and find them because I don't know where they are. And I just found out that they don't make them anymore and they're worth like
Yeah.
60, 70 a
They're even
piece.
more valuable now.
and and I'm like, cool. I don't know where they are, but
I don't know. They're in a
I
box
would love to
somewhere,
have them on my
probably.
bookshelf now.
But yeah, huge. I would recommend that also for anyone who's like, if you like fantasy, like adventure stories and stuff like that.
And if you grew up a Greek mythology nerd, it's for you. It's definitely for you.
Oh yeah, the way that they tied in all of that, I was like, that was really good.
Yeah, he does a really good job, and he's done it with other religions too. He's done it with like Norse and Egyptian, and I've read those books, and they're done really well too. So he does his research, and he like creates this whole world around them, which is really cool.
Nice. Okay. Well, cool. Yeah. Go check that out. Disney Plus. I'm loving the book that I recently finished. It's let's see, fiction. That's the not real part. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I always get those mixed up. But yeah, it's a fiction book called More Than This by Patrick Ness, and it does start off pretty slow, but it's like in a it keeps you very curious of just like, I have no idea what's going on. What is like, where, like, it's a guy who just like wakes up in his childhood home, but everything is like the yard is overgrown, like, 3-4 feet tall grass, and like there's dust over everything, like everything just stopped and no one has been there in decades. And he's alone trying to figure out what is going on, where he is, all of that. And then like as the chapters progress, you start to like learn different things about him and get clues of like what's going on, and like, is this like some sort of like weird version of hell, or is this like real life? Is this, what's going on? And yeah, there's like a few twists in it that I was just like, what? Okay.
I love those kind of books.
I love books. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna write that down. I love those books. So
yeah, this came recommended from, I love asking people the question of like, what's a book or movie or TV show that like you would just love to be able to watch again for the first time, knowing nothing about it. And that was how this got recommended. And I was like, okay, I'm going to check it out. And it was really good. I lost it for a bit. I mostly read on planes. I love to read on a plane for some reason. So it got lost in my luggage and like got put away in the suitcase. And then it wasn't until I was packing to go on another trip that I was like, it's here. I've been looking for this book. So I was able to finish it this last plane ride. So, but yeah. Okay. This has been great. I can't believe it's almost been an hour. So
we do that every time.
I know, yeah, but it's good. Like it's a great conversation. I could literally talk for hours. Where can people find you? Where can they, listen to your podcast? All the things.
Yeah, so you can find me at my website www.ashleighsnyderphotography.com, and it's ASHLEIGH, not EY. Just gonna start it there. You can also find me on Instagram by the same name at Ashleigh Snyder Photography, or with my podcast at Let It Click Podcast, which you can listen to on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well.
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah. And I'll have links to all that in the show notes too. So everyone go follow Ashleigh, say hey, go listen to the podcast. Yeah, well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed getting to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. And I love getting to talk about this and to teach others. So this was such a great opportunity.
Yay. Awesome. Well, cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in and being with us here on YouTube, on Facebook, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye, y'all.